silver Kia, license plate 8596ABX. Can we get you to move your vehicle so people can get in and out of the North 40 a little bit easier? Please. Or if you don't mind me moving it, I'm willing to move it for you too. There's a parking space right beside.
I welcome you this morning to Pine Valley Christian Church, where we are gathered here as friends and family of Sally Hansen to praise God for her life, to share our joy, to grieve together, to be with one another, and to reaffirm our faith in the Creator's unfailing love. I'm going to read Sally's obituary. Sally Allison Duckworth Hansen was a true force of nature, a woman whose wide open heart and infectious laughter acted as a universal welcome mat. The daughter of T.A. Duckworth and Nell Edwina Nelson, her journey began in Missouri and blossomed in Wisconsin, where she formed an unbreakable bond with her sisters, Jane and Celeste. The spark of her greatest adventure was ignited at Camp Manitowish when she met her lifelong love and co-pilot, David. After earning her bachelor's degree from Beloit College, the two embarked on a 60-year voyage that spanned continents. Their marriage served as a lighthouse of devotion, radiating warmth that made everyone feel safe and seen through the pillars of education, community, and faith. Sally believed that with a good map and enough love, every person could reach their full potential. This belief fueled a brilliant career in education anchored by her master's from the University of Oregon. She acted as a steady current, uplifting others towards success, from shaping young minds in Hawaii and mentoring teachers in Kansas to her vibrant years of teaching middle schoolers in California. Alongside her own career, Sally was an anchor in her husband's ministry. She walked with her heart open into every opportunity to serve, supporting David's work and building up their church communities with tireless grace and a spirit of true partnership. In every port of call, Sally built a harbor of friends. She was a devoted lover of dogs and tireless cheerleader for the underdog. Her laughter serving as the fuel for every bridge game, PEO meeting, sporting event, and gathering. Now I'm going to welcome David to introduce the family.
Well, thank you for welcoming us, and thank you for reading the obituary, and thank you for giving us a centering prayer as we gathered to be here today. And thank you for being a part of this service and for sharing some stories together this morning. Everywhere Sally went, there was a story. She loved to tell stories, and everything that happened was grist for a story. And so what I want to do today is maybe just share some stories, some Sally stories as I know them. And then toward the end of the service, if you have some stories that you want to share, I invite you to come forward and share your stories. The only requirement is the stories have to be concise, sometimes, and you have to speak from the podium. Because there are other people online who are listening and sharing and participating in this service, and they will not hear you if you don't stand at the podium. So please come and stand at the podium. My first story is a story about wearing this medallion. It was, I'm not used to standing at the podium, by the way. So. But this medallion was given to me by a Choctaw Indian. And I'm wearing it today because it represents for me the wisdom of the indigenous community and the ways in which they have enriched our lives and our ministries throughout time. Just one story short, but there was a national campaign of the church under the rubric of justice, peace, and the integrity of creation. And a Seneca, member of the Seneca tribe, came to me one day and he said, you know, if Native Americans had coined that phrase, it would have been the integrity of creation, justice, and peace. So it's that kind of interchange and learning and listening with indigenous people that kind of helps to rearrange your mental furniture after a while. And you begin to question why things are the way they are and to try to see things in some new and different and sometimes helpful ways. Also want to share a couple stories about Pine Valley Church. We were members of this church in various ways for a decade. And of course, there's lots of stories, but let me just tell two. One year, the women of this church decided they were going to do a habitat build. They were going to have a women's build for Habitat for Humanity. And the saying for Habitat is, put love in the mortar joints, right? So Sally is going to put all of her love into the mortar joints of this house that's the women's build. And she had never been part of a construction project before in her whole life. It was something new, but she loved doing new things. And she got there and Lori Beck or somebody else involved with the build took her over to the sawing table and told her her job was to turn on the power saw and cut. She was over the moon. She was so excited when she pulled the trigger on that saw. The look on her face was just one of pure joy and delight. Then there was another time when she was a member of this church. It wasn't directly related to the congregation, but it was a part of her experience with this church when she discovered granny basketball. She had never played an organized sport in her life. And now she was ready. The cry for granny basketball is granny down. When she put on the Arabelle uniform, she was transformed. She was taken to a place that she had never been before. So what I'm trying to share with you is, when I think about Sally's life, one of the pillars of her life was involvement in the community. Wherever she was, it didn't take long for her to find a way to connect with community groups and community people and get involved. So I was delighted today to see some members of the PEO who are here. Sally was proud to wear a 50-year pin for her PEO membership. Her mother was a 50-year member. My mother was a 50-year member. She was a 50-year member. She was committed to this pioneering organization that advanced education opportunities for women. And she loved everything about PEO, but she especially loved the pinnacle and pizza parties once a month. She would never miss any of those. In the last 2 years of her life, another place that she got involved in was with KU Med School. There was a national study going on as Alzheimer's, and Sally had the privilege of being a part of this national study. And it was another one of these transformative experiences. She said, you know, she wasn't involved in the study for her sake, but she wanted to be involved in the study for the sake of her children and her grandchildren. And she was very disappointed when she had to drop out of that study because of her illness. But it's another example of the ways in which she looked for opportunities and ways to connect with people, and also to do so not only for her own sake, but for the sake of others, on behalf of others, particularly on behalf of her family. Her family was the second pillar of her life: community involvement, and then family, and the welfare and well-being of her family. And I'm just really thrilled to be able to introduce members of our family who are here today to be with us and to share in this time of celebration of Sally's life. So I'll do that now. Allison is our oldest daughter, and she has with her Dilara and Seha and awesome. There you go. And then the fourth child, Everin, is not able to be with us because he lives in Canada, but is watching online or will be connected in that way. So we salute Everin as well. Our son, Alexander, there he is. Alexander and Ashley are here with their children. And let's see, Rowan and who am I missing? Rowan and Mason and Abby and Ruby and Max and Noah. I looked right at just a minute ago. And then AJ and Bethany are not able to be here, but they live out of state. But we want to remember them. And then Elizabeth and Damien flew in from France. And so Matisse and Milena are here. And then we're also joined by Sally's two sisters, Jane and her husband, Frank, and Celeste and her husband, Scott. And then Steve and Betsy are here, and Isaiah and Laura. And then my sister lives in St. Cloud, so she's watching online. So I just feel so fortunate to have so many people, to have our whole family come together for this time to be with one another. I cannot tell you how much it means to me to have you here together. Sometimes when Sally and I were thinking kind of theologically, we would say our family is a missional family. Or when we were less theological about it, we'd say our family is the embodiment of what the 21st century family is going to look like. We're an interracial, interfaith, international, trans family. Our children, our grandchildren have dual citizenship with the United States and Canada and France and Turkey. And we delight in the variety and just the multicultural life that's flourishing around us. And as part of Sally's dream for the world was world peace, to doing everything we can to model for the world ways that we could live together in harmony. So I wasn't at all surprised when at a national church gathering, Sally was invited to introduce the keynote speaker for that event. So she had time to sit behind stage and then to introduce Bishop Desmond Tutu, who had come to talk to us about Truth and Reconciliation Commissions and the need for peace. So I'm delighted today that 3 of her grandchildren are going to light the candle for peace. Milena and Seha and Noah are going to stand together and light the candle for peace. And as they do so, Allison, Alex, and Elizabeth are going to come forward to lead us in the responsive litany after the candle is lit.
When we are sad and we need a good laugh, we remember Sally.
When we are weary, brokenhearted, and in need of strength.
We remember Sally. When we are standing with persons in need of solidarity, we remember Sally. Sally will always be with us.
So part of the ceremony today is not only to celebrate Sally's life, but also to pass the torch to a new generation. So I'm glad we can do that together. I also have selected a reading for this morning from 1 Corinthians. And I won't preach a sermon, but it does need some context and a little bit of interpretation. Oh, we're supposed to sing first.
I am. With the congregation.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad for that. Let me sit down.
You have now seen my story with David and Sally, making sure that all goes well. So we're going to sing together today in this very room. We are singing all 3 verses. This very room, there's quite enough love for one like me. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for one like me. And there's quite enough hope and quite enough love to chase away any Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus, is in this very room, there's quite enough love for all of us. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all of us. And there's quite enough hope and quite enough love to chase away any Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus is in this very room. In this very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all the world. And there's quite enough hope and quite enough love to chase away any Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus is in this very room.
Thank you. I would often tell Sally, I need all the help I can get. And she would often say, you're right. So I want to reflect a little bit on this reading from 1 Corinthians. In this passage, Paul's talking about life and death and resurrection. And this is my interpretation of what Paul is trying to say. It's not necessarily a standard interpretation, but what he begins by saying is he's affirming. He's saying life is good. This is God's creation. God has made everything. God has blessed everything. God has called it good. That doesn't mean it's perfect, but it is good, which means it is adequate for the purposes for which God intended. And then he goes on to say, God has sown into the fabric of creation the reality of death, the principle of limitation, that everything that is created has a limited time in time and space. So that death is a part of life. But then he goes on and says, since death is a part of life, it is not greater than life itself. That the greater mystery, the greater wonder, the greater source of awe is the reality of creation. One of my favorite writers, Leonard Cohen, put it this way. He says, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Paul says, the perishable nature must put on imperishable. The mortal nature must put on immortality. When the perishable puts on the imperishable and the mortal puts on immortality, then shall come to pass the saying that death is swallowed up in victory. Elsewhere, Paul says, we grieve. We grieve the passing of a loved one and a friend, but we do not grieve as those who have no hope. For we are born to a better hope. Or Leonard Cohen again says, we come from love, we return to love. And our good friend Valerie Russell used to say to us, we are like members of the crew of Starship Enterprise, going where no one has ever gone before, in the name of love, for the sake of love. And in the 60 years that Sally and I shared together, we went a lot of places we had never been before. And every place had a story. And sometimes I would apologize to Sally and I'd say, I'm sorry we moved so much. And she would say, are you kidding? She loved every move. She loved every adventure. She loved meeting new people, going new places, and doing new things. But I'll tell just two stories that talk about this newness. In 1967 and 68, we moved to the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area. And Sally got a job teaching in the Oakland Public Schools. It was a school in the heart of the Oakland ghetto. And in 1967 and 68, racial tensions were running a little high. Those were the civil rights days. Martin Luther King was assassinated in the spring of 68. Sally was called to teach a second grade class in this ghetto school. She was the seventh teacher in that classroom, and it was early October. School had just started. But true to her principles, she was determined to love those kids and to see them live into a new potential they didn't know about. She stayed the course of that year, but not only did she stay the course of the year, she won the respect of those kids, she won the respect of their parents, and the respect of the community, to the point where she was making home visits. And that just boggles my mind when I think about this young white woman making home visits in the heart of the ghetto in the height of the civil rights movement. She did it unafraid because her children trusted her, her families trusted her, and the community trusted her because of the way in which she taught each other to love one another. And the second story comes from our years in Hawaii. Sally was part of what was called the Good Beginnings Alliance. And as a member of GBA, she lobbied the state legislature on a regular basis for legislation for children and families. She was a community organizer. She was the author of a book with Kathy Medigliani, Playing to Learn, and she was a teacher. She would go into indigenous communities and work with parents, bringing them together, teaching parents and children how to work with each other to create a culture that is respectful of children. And Liz Chan, the executive director of GBA, wrote a letter to me in which she said of Sally, "Because of Sally, we created a new term, keiki contacts." Keiki being the Hawaiian word for children. Liz says, because of Sally, many people on the GBA staff went on to finish their degrees in early childhood education. So those are just a few of the stories that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for listening and letting me share. Thank you for being here. I've asked Jane if she would share some stories from the family. Then Epiphany is going to lead us in a song, and there will be time for a few more stories, beginning, I think, with Seha, and then others who may wish to share. Jane?
Forward with joy. That was my sister, Sally. Her enthusiasm and commitment gave momentum to all of her projects and passions, even if it was just planning a family trip or reunion with high school friends. She had a rare gift for connecting people and making them feel like they belonged. The girl never met a stranger. Sally poured her heart into the missions that she deemed worthy. She wanted to save the world, and her energy and her faith did just that in her own corner of it. She lived by a code of positive change based on fairness, integrity, opportunity, and connectedness. She was always so curious, constantly pushing, learning, and coming up with new solutions. A few years ago, I started thinking that Sally would make the perfect subject of a documentary on education. She opened preschools, developed early childhood programs for children and parents, taught elementary and middle school students in underserved areas. She guided adult learners, led college courses, and mentored new teachers. To top it off, she and her colleague, John Hope, even developed online courses when she was in her 70s. This wasn't just a resume. It was a lifelong journey focused entirely on making the world a better place. But Sally also knew how to have fun, and she brought that same fierce passion to her sports. She loved her Packers, the Brewers, the Kansas teams, and anything NCAA basketball. One year, she and David, the love of her life, got Final Four tickets through the lottery at the NCAA. The finals were all the way in Seattle. Because the tournament fell on Easter weekend, David had other commitments and couldn't go. So Sally asked me to step in. Even though our favorite teams weren't playing, we went and loved every minute of it. Together with David, Sally enriched the lives of so many people: children, parents, family, friends, and peers. She always had a proud story to share about her children or grandchildren. We will miss those stories and her wisdom and her laughter. Celeste and I will miss her terribly, but we will honor her legacy, match her spirit, and move forward with joy.
So this song is, I think, such a great fit for Sally and her life. She was certainly a precious friend. We're going to sing this song twice. I will sing it for you the first time through, and then the second time through, we'd like for you to join us. So pay close attention the first time. The words will be up there. And we want you to sing with unbridled enthusiasm. All was lost. You changed my mind. You gave me hope. But just the old soft soap. You showed that we could learn to share in time. You and me and Rockefeller. I'll keep plugging on. Your face will shine through all our tears. And when we sing another little victory song, precious friend, you will be there. Here we go. Just when I thought all was lost, you changed my mind. You gave me hope. But just the old soft soap. You showed that we could learn to share in time. You and me and Rockefeller. I'll keep plugging on. Your face will shine through all our tears. And when we sing another little victory song, precious friend, you will be there, singing in harmony. Precious friend, you will be there.
So we can come and share some precious friend stories. I think Seya's going to lead us off, and then after Seya is, if you want to speak, I do remind you to come to the podium for the story that you want to share. Seya.
My Nana was a teacher and a guiding spirit. She was sure of what she thought was right and clear in her pursuit of justice and peace. That is what made her an amazing teacher. She taught us more than we'll ever realize, and I have so many memories of growing up in her house as a little kid. All the maps that she had hung up, all the weird artwork that I'd never seen anything like before. And I remember sleeping under all of her heavy quilts. And I especially remember how excited she got about the game shows that we'd watch on TV. And all the stories that she would tell me, all of the stories. As a kid, I did think my grandma was weird. I'd never seen that many maps in anybody else's homes. I'd never seen that kind of artwork in any of my friends' parents' houses. And I'd never met somebody else that had moved that many times. But once I got older, especially once I went to Camp Manitowish where my grandparents met, I started collecting maps too. I wanted my room to be covered in maps, and I wanted it to be full of things that I collected on all of my adventures. I started taking interest in childcare and teaching. And I had to think back on when I was a kid, and she would tell me about her classrooms and how she managed them. And of course, whenever I tried to do whatever I could remember she told me she did, it would work. And then I started traveling even more, and I started collecting weird local art from wherever I was. And so then I started thinking, this is getting a little bit suspicious. Am I really that much like my grandma? And the answer is yes. Her determination and deep care about doing what was right made her a force to be reckoned with, one that built communities through teaching kindness. So how could I not at least try to be like her? Even if I didn't know it was my Nana, even if I didn't know it, my Nana was always somebody that I looked up to and aspired to be like. I remember when I'd call, she'd be ready with tons of stories of adventures old and new. So I'm happy to see us celebrate her life doing what she spent her entire life doing, building communities and teaching one another, telling each other all the stories we have of her, and connecting.
You reminded me of another story. Where there's a period of time, it was about a 4-year period of time, we moved every year to a different house. And Elizabeth's friends came home one day and said to her mother, "It isn't fair. Elizabeth gets a new house every year, and we have to stay at our same old house." I don't know if anybody else wants to share a story at all. Well, come forward. Oh.
Hi, I'm Carol, and my stories will be much less esoteric than the ones you've already heard. But I was one of the first people, I think, that Sally met when she came to Wichita. I was working at Baker University here in Wichita, and Sally came and applied to be a teacher. And so we became colleagues. And at that time, she was talking about Elizabeth getting married in France, and I said, "Ooh, I want to go. And so she said, "Sure, I can get you an invitation." Well, never been a shrinking violet. Well, instead, I took a job somewhere else. And so I had hired Sally at Baker. Well, when I got back, she was teaching at Southwestern, so she hired me at Southwestern. So it was a nice situation that we had. But one of the stories that I tell that, of course, we always laughed, as I'm sure you all did, but Sally had been in the hospital several years ago, and she came home, and so I went out to her house to visit her. And so David decided, since I was there, he would go run some errands. Well, while we were sitting there, a young man came to deliver a small oxygen machine. And so I took him upstairs and showed him where to put it. And when he came back downstairs, Sally said, "I want you to show me how to do this so I can take care of this oxygen machine if David isn't here." And so the young man said, "Okay." And so, I went over and leaned way down, and Sally picked up her oxygen hose and came over, and we're leaned down over this thing, and the young man goes, "On, off, on, off." Yeah, that sort of sums up Sally, right? Well, anyway, we were laughing hysterically, and this guy couldn't wait to get out of there because I'm sure he thought there is something wrong with these people. So I'm sure with all of you, you laughed as much with Sally as I always did. And we love David to death, and we'll miss you all.
So when I first met David and Sally, Sally was just so excited about my husband getting to work with David. My husband used to be the choir director here. And one of the days, David and Jeff were just at it just, goofy. And she said, "Oh, they're just so funny together." I said, "Yeah, they're kind of like Mutt and Jeff." And she said, "No, I think that they're Wichita's version of Abbott and Costello. So she always had a hug, and she always had the right words to say at the right moment. It didn't matter what mood it was that you were in. It was like she instinctively knew, and she had the right thing to say. She'll be missed. Abbott and Costello.
Well, anybody else who wants to share? Oh, John Hope. Speaking of, hi, John.
My name's John Hope, and Jane referred to me earlier. I taught out at Southwestern social studies methods. I had gotten to that job through a mutual friend. And while I was teaching that class, a lot of my students kept saying, "You need to meet our science teacher." And I kind of looked at them like, "Well, why?" And they said, "You will love her." And one night they said, "She's here. We're bringing her up here." And they just walked out of the room and brought Sally in. And my life changed so much better for the better for that thing. This lady, we started, and they said, "Oh, she talks about her grandchildren. She talks about everything." And the thing was, I do the same thing. And we ended up team teaching a lot. And one of the classes that we had was getting kids ready to take the KPTP, which is the licensing test. And we would meet with them during their student teaching. And these kids would come after school, and they looked like they'd just been shot out of a cannon with their student teaching. And sometimes they would still be hanging around at 7:30 after the class adjourned at 5:30. And again, Mama Sally started realizing these kids needed someone to talk to. And some of these kids were having the cooperating teacher from hell and were really having a hard time. And Sally just took them under their wing. And she showed them how to get through what was a tough situation. And it was very interesting. I had been in districts like Salina, Olathe, Derby, and Wichita, which were pretty standard, where she had had such extra interesting experiences, like he said, in Oakland, Des Moines, various places. She said, "I'd always worked with the unfortunate." Most of these kids at Southwestern and WSU were visualizing teaching in Andover, Goddard, places like that. Sally would start telling her stories about the day after Martin Luther King had died, and where he said, "You take all those kids home," and the person that she was with had a bug, and they had to get all those kids in a bug and take them home. She also talked about how the Black Panthers had burned down a lot of the buildings except her room because she had worked on helping serve lunches. And it was very, 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 these kids' eyes were like this. And she talked about that second grade class where she was the sixth teacher or whatever. And it was very, very, it was great. And it was so wonderful. And we had more fun laughing. We laughed our way all through those classes. We also graded those exams. We had to grade from other institutions. We always played, "Guess, where do you think this came from?" And we were either right on target or we missed it by half a state. But the most funny thing about it was we always taught together. And Sally, when I would go on too long or say something she didn't approve of, I still have pink bruises on my knees for where she kicked me. The other thing was in 2024, lightning struck my house. I had lost both my son and my wife into 2020. And after that, Sally was hell-bent that I was going to move into. And as you know, when Sally makes up her mind, and I moved in, and it was one of the most wonderful things. And like I say, I still thank God for the day those kids said, "You need to meet our science teacher." My life became so much better as a result of it. I'm going to miss you terribly. And I've met the whole family, and they've all just been absolutely wonderful.
There's one or two more stories.
This isn't a story. I apologize. It's going to sound more like an infomercial.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kathy Stratman, and it's my honor today to pay tribute to Sally as a sister in PEO. Thank you for that nice introduction about PEO, David. It's a philanthropic education organization where women motivate, educate, and celebrate women. Doesn't that sound like Sally? Our flower is the Marguerite daisy, the simple, beautiful Marguerite daisy. And our emblem is a star, which you see right here. And then there's also one in the hallway. Sally was initiated into the organization May 9th of 1969 in Berkeley, California. And then she joined other chapters as she and David moved around the country. She joined our FY chapter. That's what we call our individual group meetings, chapters, in 2009. And I thought I remembered that her mom and your mom and her sisters had been PEOs as well. I think there are almost as many PEOs in the audience today as there are family members, or I thought so until you all walked in. Not quite so many. Wave if you're a PEO. See, quite a few. All right. Sally recently served several years in our Greater Wichita PEO Council as the coordinator of education scholarships awarded to local young women. And she did celebrate 50 years as a PEO in 2019 and was named a Golden Girl. And that honor is really special to her, was special to her. She lit up the room when she was playing pinochle every month over at Prairie Homestead Retirement Center or bridge at the Pizza Hut. Presiding over a chapter meeting, she was president in 2016, or leading devotions as our chaplain in 2024. And I know we all laughed more when she was there. There's a special PEO memorial service in which we honor a sister as she passes to a new chapter, Chapter Eternal. And I'd like to read the ending of that tribute, if I may. The fragile beauty of the flower will perish, but the principles of faith, love, purity, justice, and truth abide forever. A single star sparkles new, set in heaven, for Sally Hansen.
Thank you. I'm so glad you shared that story. One more. And then I think we'll call upon Milena. I didn't see you there, Jeff, or I wouldn't have called on you. Nice to see you, friend.
Hello, my name is Jeff. I was the choir director here, music director here for several years. My wife has already spoken. I need to clarify. My strongest memory of Sally, and I wish I'd have gotten a chance to meet her more, outside of here. But there was a grain of truth in what Elizabeth said about when David and I would get together. But I want to clarify that we were not fooling around. We were discussing matters of great import and depth to an untrained observer might have thought we were being foolish. We were serious at all times. The thing I remember most about Sally was she would sit quietly and listen, and then would just speak truth that would just barrel right to the point. And I can tell from the looks on some of the family's faces that it was not just me. So she was a force to be reckoned with in a very quiet way. And thank you for letting me say something about it.
So I'd like to call on Milena. She's going to come and share with us a poem, and then will have a benediction.
I am Elena. To dance with the waves, like waves rolling upon the shore, life forces itself upon me. Sometimes gently, sometimes with harsh, hurried crashing. Standing immobile like a cliff against the onslaught of the ocean, I am doomed to be shaped by the forces opposing me. But to dance with the waves, like the coastal sands shifting, drifting, weaving patterns from each wave playing violently or softly upon me. This is to create of my life a work of art.
So there's many facets of Sally's life, most of which we've mentioned, but one of which we have not. Sally loved dogs, especially dachshunds, but all dogs and all animals, really, but especially she loved her dachshunds. And a friend, Margaret Zawatsky, who was a teaching colleague in Colorado, shared this reading, which I'd like to use as our benediction today. Margaret says, Sally and I affirmed the innate goodness and ability to learn of all children, and we were devoted to our various pets, she dachshunds and me cats. We people who love animals speak of them as crossing over the rainbow bridge and being greeted by all loved ones, human and canine, who have gone before. It is a joyous reunion with lots of hugs and barking. Today, Sally has crossed the rainbow bridge, but her work is not yet done. And so I would like to call your attention to a memorial that we've established in Sally's name, the Campership Endowment. Sally and I, as Sal said, met at Camp Manitowish in northern Wisconsin. My father worked there and was a camper there. Sally and I were campers and worked there. Our children all went to that camp, and now Seha is working there. It's a way of investing into a future generation of leaders. And Sally is now a part of that legacy, enabling these future generations to have this same experience. So let us prepare for a song for sending forth. I did that one right, didn't I?
So I helped take over a little bit of the leadership here in the church after David and Sally retired, and it was a joint retirement. It was not just David who retired. And this was one of Sally's favorite songs. And one of the requirements she always had was that we would grab hands as we sang for peace. And so I won't make everybody stand, but if you will at least grab the hands of the people beside you and think of Sally and know that we still can bring peace on earth.
Let peace begin with me. Let this
share with us? The church has arranged for us to have a time of fellowship together. If you would invite us to that time, that would be great. Thanks.
You all are invited to continue to honor the legacy of Sally, to continue to live that legacy, sharing her love and stories. So if you enter or exit throughout this way, or if you go that way around the hall, just follow the crowds down to the Grace Room, which is like our community room, and we would love to continue this time together.
Thank you.